Hey, greetings, the body, the people. This is a man called Chris Dorsey of the Virginia Militia, and you are listening to Renegade Broadcasting. And I am so glad to be on the air tonight. I'm happy to be talking to the smartest and also, I guess all the feds and FSB agents and Mossad agents that they like to come in and say hi every now and again. They like to say hi around the neighborhood. They also like to say hi on the air. So we're saying greetings to you, and we're doing this broadcast for you. We're dedicating this broadcast, this edition of the Militia Intelligence Report, to the counterintelligence agents and the alphabet agencies that folks, I guess, euphemistically refer to as the intelligence agencies of the Jew-occupied, criminal, and treasonous United States government. And we're going to call this episode Connecting the Dots, FBI, NSA, DHS, Treason. So basically, this is going to be about the war against the people being conducted not just by the United States military, not just by the psychological warfare carried out by the media through television and all other manner in which they do that, or we're talking about the so-called intelligence agencies for the United States government and all the sickest and most nefarious activity they're involved in, including manipulating this election, seemingly, at least on the surface level, for a foreign government. And that, of course, is the Russian government, who seem to have their strings attached to both Jewish puppets and both extremely compromised Jewish puppets. And we'll get into that because, again, at the end of the day, we keep coming back to this child pedophile network, this trauma-based mind control operation, and the assets that the government manipulates through these operations. And on the line right now, and I'm going to bring him in just a minute, is Glenn Sutphin. He's going to talk about something Kyle referenced in last night's absolutely must listen to show on Solar Storm. That's the Solar Storm from yesterday, the Sunday after the rigged election, as usual. Kyle called it exactly right and said that they were going to rig it and the victory would be handed to, in a rigged election, Donald Trump. So he called it kind of exactly right. Glenn and I were discussing the research he had where the local Chattanooga, Tennessee affiliate of NBC somehow let the cat out of the bag with the pre-decided AP results of the 2016 election, showing, I may add, a correct result as far as the so-called popular vote goes. And I know that they just make these numbers up, but the numbers they made up, that all these Trump train Yahoo schmucks, whatever they are, mental midgets, Jew sycophants, worshipers of the criminal government, that they're touting these rigged results, and it shows that their candidate got less votes than and their candidate, being Trump, got less votes than the other criminal that is controlled in this Jeffrey Epstein sex scandal, Hillary Clinton. And of course, we know those voting machines were rigged by George Soros in a lion's share of the battleground states. There's some guys from the Renegade think tank that we have, put up their article called I think it's called the Trump Soros connection, but it's something to that effect. I've posted it a number of times. Apologies if I don't get all the things exactly right. I think Rainier, wrote the article, and it was documenting while in 2009, during a Donald Trump bankruptcy, while he was several $100 million behind on the Chicago Trump Hotel and Tower, that it was George Soros. Trump needed $300 million. He didn't have it, and he was going bankrupt. But in comes George Soros, and he gives Donald Trump a $160 million bailout through his investment in that money pit known as the Chicago Trump Hotel and Tower. So then, of course, all we have to do to connect George Soros to the Jeffrey Epstein pedophile scandal, which both Hillary Clinton, who seemingly possibly won the election and conceded before the vote count got even close to being finished. She couldn't concede fast enough. And she won the so-called popular vote. But she's associated with this Jeffrey Epstein scandal, so she's so compromised, she'll do whatever they tell her. And that's what happened. And Kyle referenced the fact that, oh, yeah, she raised all that money. Did she spend it? Did she get to keep it? What we see on the surface level, once they have them so compromised in so many manners, doesn't matter. They're all compromised 100%. So Epstein and Trump are named in multiple lawsuits that folks can look up and see. And evidently there's death threats against the Jane Doe that is bringing these court cases. And who knows if she's even still alive. But we have all those other accusers of Donald Trump raping them, including his ex-wife. And we can see Donald Trump in pictures and videos molesting his daughter. And he talks about it. So okay, got the Epstein connection there. And of course, Peter Soros, George Soros' son, he regularly hangs out with the Trumps, the Clintons, the Alan Dershowitzes, the Mick Jaggers, the Alec Baldwins, the Ehud Baruchs of the world on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express and go to his island. Oh, Hillary allegedly has been to the island 6 times as well. So we're going to tie this in to the fact that the FBI also put out there no attacks on Trump, none of these connections, nothing about, WikiLeaks mentions nothing about this Epstein scandal in regard to Donald Trump, none of it. So it's all one-sided. You see it there. And who's directing all of this? Who carries out on the ground level? We know that they're Mossad puppets, but on the ground level, who carries out all these false flag attacks? Who pushed through and obfuscated the 9/11 investigation, possibly more than anybody else? The FBI. Who carried out the Boston bombing? The FBI. Who put forward the agenda of martial law in Boston and shutting down what the 5th largest metro area in the United States through a hard martial law, going door to door, disarming Americans? The FBI. And who is over top of them and oversees this now? The DHS. And who's running all of these false flag operations? Who's directing, the outcomes of these elections? Who's investigating? And where did it come from? Where did the FBI come from? The mind of, allegedly, J. Edgar Hoover, another very compromised individual. And I will say clearly the beginnings of the FBI stemmed out of the Kappa Alpha order at George Washington University. And then, of course, it was, a law enforcement arm that on the very surface level was, a bulwark of anti-communistic, European nationalist law enforcement. But it was nothing further from the truth because they were infiltrated from the very beginning, and J. Edgar Hoover was so compromised that he was under the control of the Jewish organized crime network, which was pulling the strings on the Cosa Nostra, and of course, the United States government, and still does to this day when you make the connections to Donald Trump and the Russian Federation government and Russian organized crime, which should not be called Russian organized crime, because that's the Meyer Lansky incarnation. The Brighton Beach crew, the Brighton Beach gang, has always been not Russian, but Jewish. And that's the network that sits on top of it all, that controls the NSA, that controls the DHS, that controls the FSB, which is, man, the FSB is running so many operations inside of the United States right now, and they're using the FBI and the DHS as their proxy. And of course, this is just a larger incarnation of the Mossad and the Jewish intelligence networks, which if you say the FBI, Jewish intelligence network. If you say the CIA, Jewish organized crime intelligence network. And also you could say intelligence arm not of the United States government, but of the United Nations. Or you could also say intelligence arm of the international banking cartel headed by the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, occupied since the late 1890s, since the protocols, which is their playbook, stems from this period in Basel. Of course, we know that's occupied territory as well, because we know the Jews aren't the natural natives of that land. They wipe out and conquer, not conquer, but I say not conquer, but co-opt. So easily co-opt, because they never conquer, they always co-opt, and conquering is less to them than co-opting, because they control everything, and if a conqueror will let the other know that they've been conquered. The American people, they think it's some sort of conspiracy theory that the Jews run everything, but of course they could never deny the facts, because that's all we're talking about. We're talking about high levels of Jewish operators controlling all of these governments through the corporations, through the military-industrial complex, and also through the compromise of all of these government agents. And we're going to get into how they do that. And I want to bring Glenn in right now. And Glenn, I just want to get your thoughts on what was covered maybe in the first quarter of the show, not quarter of the show, but first 14 minutes of the show.
Well, I can attest to the FBI part, where I have physical evidence, and I went in and testified to them and what happened there. I was able to pull up the New York Post articles.
Oh, okay, Glenn, yeah, this is regarding the FBI running
and the FBI running the child porn on various parts of the internet, including Facebook for you people that don't know what Facebook is. But they pretty much, there was like 5,000 computers and 5,000 employees at the Pentagon with child porn on the computers, with records that they're buying it and they're producing it and they're pushing it, and the FBI knows about it. And I was literally ordered off of this investigation. I can give you the two articles that John Cradell of the New York Post put out. December 4th, 2012, he put out, Facebook may be no match for perverts. And then you scroll down through it, because I know nobody will. I'll read you the clip off of that one.
Please.
The clip says, one of these tipsters, oddly enough, is a guy who says he's a photographer in the adult entertainment industry. He started monitoring Facebook's pedophile sites because he didn't want his 14-year-old son running across the disgusting images. My son was online one day, and these images popped up in his inbox, he said. You don't want that. If you do what any parent would do, investigate. He tried to report them to Facebook, which he said didn't seem interested, so he contacted me. I know, considering what he does for a living, there is a certain irony and justice in this guy's story, but I don't think anyone would disagree that pedophilia is a whole different issue from the way adults behave sexually. This tipster transmitted several pictures to me that he said were pornographic and on Facebook. They were sent in code since this stuff is illegal. Yeah, Facebook, excuse me. I always do that. But that was by John Cradell, the New York Post. Now, I had posted before that in November 28th of 2012 that I was in contact with him and that I had to send stuff through means that, you know, can't be,
Glenn, real
so
quick,
that it's not illegal.
Real quick. Okay, so this is illegal. This is what Facebook, which is, you know, nothing more than a front for the FBI, the DHS, the CIA,
the CIA, DARPA, IARPA, yeah, you name it.
Okay, yeah, great point. DARPA and IARPA, yeah, that's the main things. Okay, so does the New York Post writer, and that's John, and can you spell his last name?
That would be Cruddele, Cradell.
John Cradell of the New York Post. Okay, so he's pretty much he's being a little inaccurate about some of this. He's not putting your name, even though you told him.
Well, no, not in the first one, because we debated about putting my name in on the first one because I hadn't talked to the FBI at that point.
Okay, so you had not talked to the FBI.
Yeah, at that point I hadn't talked to the FBI. This was the first article that came out where I was getting in touch with the FBI with what I had.
Okay.
And so he had to be a little bit vague.
Real quick. So for folks that are just like, hey, this sounds really insane, and like, what are these guys even talking about? We're putting in the description, and apologies to Kyle for not getting it out, before the show, but we've got a lot of links in the description that we're going to put, and of course, what we don't put in, we'll put in the comment section. And also, if you guys out there, if you're interested in the truth, do what's best. Investigate it yourself. So it's not just, you start being able to figure this stuff out for yourself, so that we don't have to tell you everything. We don't have to connect all the dots. But we'll provide a link where it was verified in, pretty much every single mainstream media outlet through court documents that the FBI admittedly was running a unlawful. Now, we're saying that these things are disgusting and unlawful.
Absolute you don't want to be on them.
The worst thing that you can imagine on the internet, and like, I don't want anyone to see it. I don't wish for any of this, except for this stuff to be totally eradicated off the internet. And we'll get into the irony a little bit later about how, folks like Sinead, Evalion, many more, and including myself and sometimes even Glenn, too, we have our hard-hitting research just pulled off the internet where nobody can see it anywhere. They can eradicate what we have on the internet, and they can't. Or, we know why, because they're putting it, the intelligence agencies are the ones that are controlling the dissemination of this filthy, unlawful, inhumane, ungodly filth that they produce themselves. But how easy it is to just rip our stuff off the internet. Why doesn't anybody say, hey, just take all this stuff off the internet? Just take it all off. We can't even get the truth out there before as soon as we put it up, they remove it from the internet like it never even existed. So how come they can't do that with this other stuff? We know why, because they're doing it themselves. Right, Glenn?
Correct. Yeah, I asked them, why, I said, it's so easy for you to remove everything else. Why can't you remove that? The answer was no answer. Of course not, because you're running it. Yes, I understand.
And so
I understand
you're interrogating. What's happening is you who have much more authority as an American, as a one of the people, that these government servants in the FBI, these alleged government servants, and we know that they're just a front for these, these
and
Jew
as a
bankers.
member of the legit press.
Right, you're press. Yeah, you're press too. You're not just one of the people. You're press. You're a credentialed journalist, and that's you were at the time. You were a credentialed journalist at the time when that guy wrote that New York Post article, of course, too.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
He acts like this is just some random kind of idiot or whatever that's tipping him off to this great information, and he's the one that's following up and giving context for everything. But you're a credentialed journalist, and you are verifying that this is happening. You have the proof. You're going to the press. You're handing them this story, and he puts it out there. And then you go to the FBI to interrogate the FBI about why they're putting out this stuff, this unlawful things that admittedly the FBI was running a child pornography website that was putting out thousands and thousands of images.
And child trafficking. Yes, there was evidence of child trafficking and other shit that's been going on there. Yes.
And they admit it. And they admit it. And they
by them not admitting it, they admit it. Yes.
But
pretty much. And telling and ordering me off the case. But
sure.
That's getting up for the next article.
Okay.
So,
okay. Hey, Glenn. How about we've got a caller on the line, and we're going to be real. Honestly, this stuff is too important. We've already verified all the red flags we're looking out for. But anyways, if it's all right with Glenn, we'll take callers, but it's got to be on topic. And if I'm not saying this caller is. I think I know who this is, but I'm never sure. If it's all right, you want to take some questions about what you know about all this stuff. And we're getting into so much more, guys. We're going to get into UN Agenda 2050, and we're going to connect this to the election. We're going to get into some of these riots and how we saw it coming and how we called exactly what's happening, and how we saw that they were rehearsing in the exact same place during the summer for an event after the election. And we discussed how that was happening while we were filming in August, that this was going to happen, this exact thing. Black Lives Matter protest after the election, disputing the results. So, Glenn, is that all right to bring a caller in?
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah, sounds cool, man.
All right. Hey, caller 931. Is this James?
Yes, indeed it is. I'm chiming in a tad late, so I'm not real sure about what you're talking about when it comes to the feds. And I know that they're crooked and everything about the FBI is pretty bad, but I'll probably just listen in and maybe chime in here.
Okay. Hey, sounds excellent. If you got a question or if you have anything to say, feel free, and I much appreciated. We'll get everything going, and we'll give the call-in number 747-222-8807, and that number again is 747-222-8807. And if we have calls in addition to James, great, and if not, hey, that's great too, because this is prima facie evidence for treason. We're prosecuting the government. This is a verified court of law. This is a common law court of law, and we're putting out the evidence. And these bar association attorneys can't forever use their technicalities to get themselves and their clients out of this treasonous and sadistic activity. So, Glenn, we're going to go into a break here in about a minute, it looks like. So just kind of, to verify that it's, I mean, you talked to the FBI. The FBI special agent in charge at that point in Richmond was Michael Morhart. He knew, not just from you, but also from me, about the FBI involvement in child trafficking and child pornography. And, of course, the stuff we always talk about, the, complicity and attacks on the Commonwealth of Virginia through the false flag attacks on the Pentagon, and, of course, the FBI complicity in the attacks in New York City and the cover-up in Shanksville and every aspect of the Israeli-led Jewish false flag operation. So you talked to them, and basically we're going to get into the details, but didn't they basically just tell you, we have no comment, we're not denying anything, and stop looking into this at all? Is that correct?
Pretty much. Yeah, we can get in on the other side of the thing on it, but yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
Okay, all right, thanks, Glenn. Hey, much more on the other side. This is really crazy stuff.
Fishnets, now you only get it in your night dress. Discarded all the naughty nights for niceness. Landed in a very common crisis. Everything's in order in a black hole. Nothing seems to pity is the past though. A Bloody Mary's like an El Tabasco. Remember when you used to be a rascal? Oh, the boys are slag. The best you ever had, the best you ever had is just a memory. And those dreams, when as daft as they seem, as daft as they seemed, my love, when you dream them all. Flicking through a little book of sex tips. Remember when
Hey, welcome back, everyone. It's 8:30 here on the East Coast of the United States, and I'm here with Glenn Sutphin and James, and looks like David Dotrieve is added to the call. I'm going to add him in just a minute. I want to just say that that Trumpaholic commercial that Sinead made was hilarious. That was the first time I had heard that, and yeah, it was just, that's good stuff, and it's right on the money, and I loved it, and that's all I have to say about that. But hey, Glenn, back to like a little bit more of a disgusting subject. So the FBI tells you basically just flake off. We don't deny anything because we can't deny anything because you already know too much about us. But just pretend like you don't know anything about it and drop it, right?
Almost, yeah. I mean, John Cradell sums it up in the next article about what happened. I mean, I wasn't just dealing with the FBI here in Richmond either, or, Virginia. I was dealing with the FBI in New York. They wanted me arrested at the same time, and dealing with Anonymous on top of that, and outing two pedos out of the groups. So it was a big mess at the time. But yeah, I mean, like I said, John Cradell, he sums it up a little bit at the end.
Okay, well then get into a little bit about how Cradell sums it up there at the end, then, and then we'll.
But you're pretty much on the money. Pretty much, they told me, stop your investigation, and I told them I'm going to continue to, it better not keep popping up. And
I mean, it has.
And it has, and they took out that account because of me reporting it and getting through to Facebook and actually talking to the guy, what was his name? Willens, I believe. Willens, I think was his last name. I don't remember his name right offhand. But I got through to him and had an hour-long discussion with him and told him a lot of stuff about his organization's Facebook that the normal person doesn't know. And they're like, well, and then they killed my account for it. And yeah, that was my second account, and I'm on my third one now. So,
Right. And Glenn,
they shut you up to shut you down,
Right, and we're going to kind of this will come back. The theme is overarching, whether we're talking about like military operations or intelligence or even the media control and kind of using.
Oh, yeah, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it's all interconnected with this. So we'll come back, and we kind of want to segue into the fact that you when you were in the Army had access to all these manuals, and you seem to have, kind of maybe a little bit of a head start for some others in the population when you start putting out your info dumps regarding the UN agenda. And we're going to go beyond, UN agenda 2020 and get into, UN agenda 2050. And of course, that's, under the auspices of, this depopulation operation that the one world government, one world UN, that's the political arm of this one world government is the United Nations. And of course, there's the military arm. There's the banking and legal arm that's located a lot in the city of London, in Basel, New York City, etc. But it's all connected at the top with this mind control operation. And it seems to be that this is a military tactic, that this just isn't a bunch of like random perverts, that these are organized perverts sitting at the very tops of the government. And they don't just get one thing out of this, out of these networks. They use it all to their advantage. And they create this thing which is the worst crime is to put the stuff out there for everyone to see, and then the lesser crime, of course, is of course there's no crime when this is just appearing on millions of individuals' Facebook feeds and many other places. It could be in the tens and hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, because this is everywhere. It's infested every place. It was on MySpace. It's on Facebook. And folks have absolutely no control over it because they're friending folks that they don't know anything about. 2/3 of the Facebook accounts, they probably aren't even real people.
Nope, they're Fed bots.
Right. And these Fed FBI bots are infecting their computer and putting on their news feeds not just regular, or even hardcore pornography, but the most disgusting of all others. And this is the FBI that's doing it. And at the very, very least, which is absolutely absurd to think that, oh yeah, the FBI was running and putting out thousands and thousands of unlawful, disgusting child pornography pictures. But hey, that's the first time that they did it and the last time they did it. They didn't do it before or they didn't do it after. They only did it for those 13 days. Give me a break. Who believes that?
I mean, the article is from 2012, okay? So if they did it back then and they're still doing it, did they only do it once? No, they've done it. They keep doing it. They're doing it. It's,
right.
Yeah, it's a nonstop program. They just keep getting caught. And they go, oh, well, we shut that one down. Yeah, that one, but the thousands of others are still up and operating. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a hydrant, just like everything else, and it's the same as everything else we're talking about.
And by admitting this and saying, hey, their logic doesn't even make sense if what was true was actually true. Like we were saying, if you find it, shut it down. Find them all, shut them all down. Find them all, shut them all down. And the first way to do that is to arrest every individual that's guilty of treason in 100 different ways, that's running the FBI, that's running the DHS, that's running the CIA, because not only are they doing this, because we don't spend as much time getting in depth on this issue as we do, say, 9/11. And honestly, I'd much rather talk about 9/11 than this.
Oh, yeah, those are sick, mate. I didn't like doing it.
Donald Trump is, as we know, with his friendship and contact with his buddy what's his name? Lucky Larry Silverstein on 9/11. We know about his obfuscation of the real 9/11 story, where he references the dancing Israelis, but says that they were Arabs celebrating 9/11. He knows what happened. He's in on it. Jared Kushner's he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the Rahm Emanuel. Not like Trump's not surrounded by Rahm Emanuels or the equivalent thereof. But look at Jared Kushner. Look at Jared Kushner. There you go. And these guys are like, okay, yeah, nothing to see here with this FBI rigging this election. Nothing to see when it looks like that criminal Hillary actually won, or the numbers they made up. They fudged it so much. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe they want another orange revolution like they had in the Ukraine. Pun intended. Orange revolution. Where I just don't think that the Americans, hey, and this is a challenge, will sit out in January to stop the inauguration from happening. And one great thing that Kyle had posted that I'm going to put in the description of this show is, hey, Glenn, did you know we won? We won. Our side won the election, and that was the side that didn't participate. Did you know we won? Congratulations. Nothing but winning. Glenn, we're going to get so tired of winning. We won. Did you know that?
Already on.
Yeah, I know. David, I'm going to bring David in, and then we're going to get back to Glenn and his. We're going to segue into the info dump on the Agenda 2050 and the UN. David, are you with us, buddy?
Yes, sir. I've been with you the entire time, and I'm going to keep this very brief because you are coming up with some. You and Glenn both are coming out with some very compelling information that every household should have a hold of, especially if you have children of your own. Now, remember what we talked about yesterday about every one of these alphabetical organizations, what they're engaged in. Let's see, we have the CIA and the Mossad running false flags. We have the FBI running kiddie porn, and we have the DEA and Border Patrol running drugs. Now, we talked about yesterday the Fast and Furious, and I'll make this real brief as usual, just to give people the kind of tricks they play and what they say to justify their actions, if they can even justify them at all. Let's say Fast and Furious. The DEA turns over all sorts of guns south of the border, putting tracking devices on them in hopes of tracking them and catching the cartels. Well, they forgot to put tracking devices on them. So many of them wound up in wrong hands, and some Border Patrol agents died. And on top of that, one cartel who was arrested told the police that he, in fact, is working for the DEA, and talks about how they work together on these drug operations. And if any of you watch television anymore, which I don't, there's a show on the History Channel called America's Book of Secrets, and they talk about the drug wars. And I remember the narrator said, could the drug war be so impossible to win that the DEA has to work with certain cartel gangs to be able to bring another cartel gang down? And he said, yeah, see, the problem is, anytime we side with a cartel gang and bring down one, that cartel gang gets big and expands its interest, and then we got to side with another one to take that down. Come on, do you take us for idiots?
They do.
They're basically telling you right here that we run the drugs, Chris. This is why the militia must be brought back. This alone, because like I said, the CIA runs false flags, the FBI runs kiddie porn, and the DEA runs drugs. Why the fuck do we need these people around telling us that they are the only legitimate authority? Why? Because you carry around a little star on your pin, a Masonic star, saying that that I've been anointed by Yahweh. I mean,
you're absolutely right, David. That's 100% correct. And let's not forget that the city, state, and any sort of municipal or county sheriffs and police departments are in on all of this as well. And basically, when you talk about a local police department, you're talking about an entity that's part of the Federal Bureau of Investigations that they're in a daily contact with. And the police chiefs, everywhere you go, they've been trained in Quantico, Virginia. So,
hey, Chris.
yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Chris,
go ahead, James.
Yeah, this is James. I always noticed, though, there was a high percentage of Mormons in the FBI and DEA.
Of course.
I mean,
great point.
I mean, and these are supposed to be some of the holiest religion in America. I mean, what is your output on that?
Yeah, the Mormons, that's a crazy Judeo-Masonic cult. They seem to be a gathering of persons with absolutely no honor, and they're really, they're another, like those Trump sycophants. They're having their European American card pulled by the militia. Yeah, because they don't get to call themselves that anymore. They're sick, sadistic. They, speaking about child prostitution rings, look at some of those Mormons. Not some of them. Look at the basis of their religion is about old men in their 60s marrying, going through books of in most cases prepubescent ladies. Girls to rape and to enslave. So that's where the Mormons are coming from. That their mind has been made filthy by their Jewish masters, and they themselves are Jewish. It's a great, they might not be bloodline Jews, but they are infected with that same Judaic mind virus. And they, of course, one of the things with the Mormons, it's always great to bring in is they have bought out our history, and it's also an important point that there are a lot of these big NSA supercomputer operations, going out of Utah, which is overwhelmingly Mormon. And the thing I was about to say is about how they own our history, in a sense, is because they have. The Church of Latter-day Saints has one of the largest collections of genealogy records in the world, and so they know our own lineage better than we do. When somebody's doing high-level genealogical research, which unfortunately I financially can't do, but I do a lot of genealogical research. I'm interested in myself and others, as far as their genealogy goes. And you have to access this through LDS computers, and that's Latter-day Saints. And they're part of, this enemy force that needs to be neutralized in every sense of the manner. And they're also pushing for these apocalyptic, visions of the world. When you look at Denver Airport and areas like Colorado, where there's a high percentage of these crazy Mormons, or you look at their propaganda through the Jew and Gentile creators of South Park and the Book of Mormon, which has been, that's great propaganda for them in every way. So
it seems like there's a high percentage of Ashkenazis in Mormonism too, because it seems like that their genealogy is always looking for that Jewish white blood.
Well, I think that that's not there. I think that I think that that's part of their mind control. I mean, it's when one looks at, according to my research, and I've never been a part of any Freemasonic, ritual, but as far as what I've seen, it looks like the exact same rituals are utilized in Mormonism, and the format is the family is the lodge, and the male head of the household is the worshipful master. So it seems like that's kind of a form. And then there's, a most worshipful grand master. That it seems to be a Masonic type a hierarchy in the so-called LDS church. And we're saying, look, when we're talking about the militia, we're talking about our goal is unification with Europe and the United States, a real European Union, not controlled by Jews, but controlled by Europeans. And, we who have, ancestry in Ireland and England, in Baden, Germany, or Basel, Switzerland, we plan to take what is our birthright, and we plan to not only take what is, in the United States, take control of the nuclear subs in Norfolk and the warships and the underground military bases and the Pentagon infrastructure in Northern Virginia. And when I say we, I'm saying we, the people, as mandated and required by the rule of law, our founding document, our European common law. And as I say over and over again, every broadcast, the only intention of this broadcast is to restore European common law to our European common land. And that is Europe and the United States. And really, it's going to be the East Coast, because again, these Mormons, and these Mexicans, they're conspiring along with the Jews to bring in these this degradation of the white race. This is part of all the Mormon prophecies of the end of days. And what I'm saying is, we will lawfully neutralize them, but we are not going to, create some sort of, détente or union with our, those who have committed treason against us. And that's why we're talking to not only the body of the people, but we're also talking to those within the FBI who maybe are just guilty of just keeping their mouths shut. You're compromised to us, but you're not compromised to the point of a firing squad or even possibly jail, because we're going to need, folks on the inside that have their hands the least dirty to have them turn over the reins to we the people. And no other form of activism is going to do anything. The idea that voting for these guys or just sitting back and doing nothing and ignoring them completely and attempting to grow your own food, do all that stuff, but you're not going to be able to grow your own food out of this. You're not going to be able to barter your way out of this. We need the government to hand over the reins of power. We shall take it. We shall take it because it's our land. And when we get into the genealogy, we'll get into why this is our land and why Basel, Switzerland is our land and why Baden, Germany and the richest parts of the European Union, which is being sucked dry by the Jewish overlords, London, that's our land. Ireland, that's our land. Spain, oh yeah, look at the genealogical records. That's our land. That's ours. And it was stolen from us, and they killed us to steal it from us. And they're waging war against us now to steal it from us and to kill us and to eradicate us. But the shoe shall be on the other foot, and that's the only way to attack this. The shoe shall be on the other foot. We shall eradicate them. We shall not lawfully neutralize them, because under the law, what is required is that the head of every intelligence agency and every special agent in charge of the FBI, DHS, DEA, ATF, etc., is guilty of treason. David brought up Fast and Furious. Don't forget about the ATF involved in the Fast and the Furious. Don't forget what David pointed out, that every time a cartel drug lord, gets picked up, what does he say? What's the number one defense? And what's irrefutable? And what can anyone who knows anything about how this operation works. It can't be denied. These cartel guys say, hey, man, I don't work for anybody but the FBI and the DEA and the ATF. That's who I work for. I couldn't do this shit without them. Are you kidding? How are we going to get this opium from Afghanistan without the CIA? How's this opium even going to be produced without the U.S. military guarding it? Guarding it so it can be cultivated, expanding it. That's why there are so many heroin addicts in the United States. That's why there's less crack out there, because crack's more expensive than heroin is now. And this is no accident that they're making us use opium. And we'll connect that with the article on Renegade Tribune where Donald Trump and his followers are talking about hopium, because we're in an opioid-induced daze. Glenn, I'm going to go back to you. We got like a couple minutes before the hour break, the break between the 8 and 9 o'clock hour here on the east coast of the United States, the occupied DHS, Jewish-occupied FEMA region. What region are we in there, Glenn?
3.
Okay.
3.
Yeah, we're in FEMA region 3 there. So what are your thoughts at the end of this hour? And then we're going to hit it strong in the final hour. We're really going to bury our enemies. And this is, again, lawfully. This is a we're putting out the evidence against them. This is a court case. So what are your thoughts at the end of this first hour?
Well, I'm going to put a bookend on what we were talking about and read the last quote from the New York Post for the second article that they put out on January 17th of 2013. John Cordell wrote, I hear from whistleblowers all the time. They tell me they are trying to get law enforcement to crack down on the misuse of the internet. Glenn Sutton, who lives in Virginia, investigated pedophile use of social network media sites on his own after his son wandered into one of these disgusting Facebook pages. He's already met with the FBI, according to my law enforcement sources. Sutton, who was told politely but firmly by the authorities to leave the investigation to them, says pedophiles will typically keep an empty site on Facebook and advertise to friends that an inappropriate photo of a child will be posted for a short time at a certain hour, usually in the middle of the night. The person posting the picture will then say something like, if I get 100 likes, the next hour will be pedo hour, explained Sutton. Now, that's important because that's the way they do all this shit, is they do it in the middle of the night, and most people aren't awake, but the hardcore people are, and they do it under the cover of night, too, and always in the dark, and they always hide the shit from you, and then when you shine light on them, like cockroaches, they run. And that's what we're trying to do, is shine the light on them and hold them accountable for their actions.
And this is the FBI and Facebook knowingly doing this.
Knowingly, yes, knowingly doing this.
And then, even though they're doing it, when they're confronted, they refuse to even stop doing it. So it's not like they were doing it and they were like, "Oh shit, yeah,
we got to stop." No, we'll just shut that page down and we'll start 10 others that are already up and running. We'll just keep going.
Basically, the operation never stops, just like their drug operations. They never stop.
It's the money.
The DEA and ATF and FBI, they always, and the police.
Put CPS in there too, because child trafficking comes from the CPS as well.
I'm tying this to the drug operation. They always arrest those on the lowest level who have the least connection to the most complicit and the ones directing it. And they always go after the lowest level to allow their operation to continue, because the lowest level is the easiest to replace.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's certain techniques. And when we start talking about red flags, I will say one more thing about Sinead's commercial about the Trumpaholics is, when I was talking about red flags live on the show, there was actually a commercial made by Sinead about red flags. So be discerning with all this stuff. If you start seeing red flags, it's a federal operation. And we'll be back with another hour. Join us on the other side. Broadcasting. Hey, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to the Militia Intelligence Report on Renegade Broadcasting, and I'm gonna kind of segue into something a little bit easier to talk about, and it's just another aspect of the war against the people engaged in by the government, and that's where we get, our lawful pre-existing crime, where we can say every government official in the United States government at a leadership position in the FBI, the DHS, Department of State, Secret Service. Well, DHS is under the Secret Service is under the control of the DHS, NSA, NASA, DARPA, the Pentagon, etc. They all are guilty of treason, and under the law of the land, the Constitution for the United States. Not me. This is not me saying this. This is what Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution says. They're required to be executed. And if we can find something better to do with these guys, to lawfully neutralize them rather than kill them, hey, I'm all for it. I used to be an ardent opponent of the death penalty, but I was only looking at part of it. I was only looking at the part showing that it seemed like they were executing a lot of innocent persons, and I never really looked at it in the way of those who engage in war against the people are really the only ones that ought to be executed. And for every one of these other predators that is out there, there's so many connections between these serial killers and the United States government that it's kind of absurd to say that they don't create these serial killers, just like they manipulate and orchestrate these false flag operations. But the main thing is, if the government were neutralized, the people would have every tool that God can give man and woman, male and female, to defend themselves. The main thing that the government does to leave us vulnerable is to take away all of our God-given rights of self-defense, and that's a big part of this. But I want to segue into this UN agenda and how I think. And I want to get Glenn and David and James' opinion, and anyone else who wishes to call in at 747-222-8807. I want to get y'all's opinion on this UN Agenda 21, and specifically UN Agenda 2050, the Jade Helm operation, Unconventional Warfare Exercise 16, which is ongoing and will morph into something else, or at least will be called operationally something else, which is all part of something, Glenn, you've done a lot of research on, called Operation Conus Base, Continental U.S. Base, which is an aggressive military operation of the United States so-called Defense Department against the American people, and how this ties into the election and a possible Trump bringing in this kind of harder police martial law, martial control is better to say, because martial law is kind of contradictory for us in the European common law system. You can't take our rights away and still call it law. Martial control, that Trump might be the guy to bring this in, but more importantly, I just want to focus on throwing Trump out the window, which will lawfully be done very soon. He's a disgusting, filthy human being. He's a filthy, treasonous piece of trash, but he's just a puppet. And how you tie this all in together with 2050 and the info dump that you just put out several weeks ago about UN Agenda 2050. Glenn, go ahead.
Well, let's start off. Agenda 2050 is Agenda 21 on steroids. It's the next step, the project for the next half of the American century, as Jeb Bush coined it, from the project for the next American century. This is the continuation, where we basically go from the FEMA regions, which you quoted that we're in FEMA Region 3, they dissolved the FEMA regions into mega regions with mega cities, walled cities and stuff. And we're basically living in the Hunger Games at 2050.
Hey,
and
Glenn, real quick. The line's coming through a little bit not clear. So try a sound check again.
Okay, can you hear me again?
Yeah, keep going. We're gonna try it out, and if it gets too bad, maybe you can hang up and call back. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, 2050 is basically agenda.
Sounds good now.
Agenda 21 on steroids. They dissolved the.
Oh yeah, we got all that. We got all that. It just keep going.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was it's basically we're living in the Hunger Games in 2050, and they're going they lay it all out in this on America2050.org. You go there and they lay everything out for you in there, and they make it look so fantastic. It's to save the planet. Oh, they're greening the planet, and the green movement is part of it. And all these movements that are springing up are all the same people under a different name that we all see them. I mean, and they're still going to chemtrail us to death, and they're going to, all the geoengineering is going to continue. The GMO is going to amp up, and they're just going to rename it and make it something nice that people are going to eat up. And those that don't like it will go to the FEMA camps. That's pretty much.
How about the connection between the documents that you saw about the hard martial law, the martial control operations, like in some of the documents that you've shown to me, and tie that to the UN, the stuff that goes back to the 1960s, where the UN's talking about disarming the world population.
This has all been a plan from, through Albert Pike. I mean, come on. I mean, it goes that far back. It's, it's connected all through the web, and you pick up traces of it. And what I've got with the documents, and I've shown some to you, they lay it all out. It's like, here's the blueprint for it. Just follow this, and that's all you need. And you can walk through like we did at the Trump PSYOP. And you can point this stuff out after you know about it. It's like, yeah, okay, they're going to give a signal. Okay, then something's going to happen. Boom, and like a wrestling match on cue, something happens, and this magical stuff happens. And they use that for their smoke and mirrors to divert you. And then you notice that they started bringing out the riot gear, and then they amp it up, and they keep amping it up, and to the point that it automatically ignites into a big riot. Because once you start getting a bunch of people faking a bunch of stuff in one area, it's going to explode into real crap. And then they can come in as the saviors, and we need this because of the riots. And they don't magically take to the streets. We've shown that they're led out there by the police. The police line the streets. Tell me they don't know where they're going when they have the police escorting them all over the place. I mean, we've pointed this out time and time again. And they're just amping up.
Glenn, just real quick to get in there, because you covered a lot of subjects. You started off with these, orchestrated and staged events at the Trump rallies. We saw it firsthand at a Trump rally, a complete police state Trump rally in Richmond Coliseum. Yeah, in June of this year. And then we saw similar incidences all across the country where there's orchestrated police on both sides, on the anti-Trump side and on the pro-Trump side, fighting with each other, signaling this, and actually punching our friend Mary in the face.
Yeah, I mean there were real incidences, like I said, and that amps up into more stuff. And
I mean, they really threw a rock in my head. I mean that's on.
Yeah,
Yeah, and there was a woman hiding behind me who, after the, rock grazed my ear, it hit her sign. And it's on film. You caught the whole thing on video. So we see that these things are happening, that they're staging the events. We name the names. We name them so many times, but we'll name a couple: Phil Wilato, Christopher Goad, Gunther Davis, Nathan Stickle, and these guys, Alan Levenberg. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on with these Mossad agents that we catch doing these things at the time, and not doing them just for ideological purposes, but going on both sides and orchestrating not only these, staged events at a Trump rally that benefit Trump, but also being the orchestrators and organizers of this. And I'm going to go to David just real quick on this one, because you and I, Glenn, we saw this Black Lives Matter, SEIU, demonstration in Richmond where they shut down Monument Avenue, which is the monument for Confederate war heroes in the city of Richmond, and they all gathered at the Lee Monument. And Glenn, we videotaped a lot of stuff, and there was one that I found where you and I specifically were talking about this is a rehearsal, amongst other things, because there was a lot of purposes for what they do. They never do things for just one reason. So if you think you figured it out and you think it's one thing, it's not just one thing ever. But one of the main things that they were doing was this was a rehearsal and a warning for whoever was needed to be warned. This was what was going to come as exhibiting the dispute of the election. And it wasn't going to be a public popular uprising. It was going to be orchestrated by the folks who orchestrated this SEIU, Black Lives Matter, which was, of course, George Soros. We talked about him. But beneath George Soros, the state capitol police, the Virginia State Police, and this is just here in Richmond, the Richmond City Police, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Department of Homeland Security over top all of it. And the DHS and the FBI are pulling the strings on all the local police, and the FBI, the Secret Service, the DHS, the local police, they are orchestrating these demonstrations and controlling them, just like we stated and verified how the CIA, ATF, FBI, etc., orchestrate the international drug trade along with the Mossad and the FSB and the MI6, of course, and just how the FBI and Google and NSA, etc., are running these child pornography, international child rape trafficking operations like Jeffrey Epstein, but they're not limited to just Jeffrey Epstein. That was just one of the big ones. And David, we want to go to you, and I'll get to you in just a second, but we remember that the event that took place in Richmond, Virginia on Monument Avenue, it took place, and the speakers, who are world famous at this point, at this event, were standing, their microphones placed on the Robert E. Lee Monument at the very base, on the steps of the Robert E. Lee Monument. And if you've been to Richmond, it's quite a artistic and much more monument. It's a historical monument. Just the monument itself is historical, and how the people of Richmond dragged it through the streets. That was a popular uprising. When the people of Richmond, dragged that statue to its perch on Monument Avenue. And what has happened since then is that the monuments, especially the Lee Monument in Richmond, but not just in Richmond, but also in New Orleans, is being constantly defaced right in front of the police. And I'll tell you who's doing it. The police are doing it. The police are doing it in both places. David, hey, can you fill us in a little bit more? We verified that this, this anti-race, the anti-Trump concocted, controlled reaction is part of this larger race war psyop, and that they are targeting statues of Robert E. Lee around the country. Are they doing that down in New Orleans too?
Yes, and they are definitely targeting more than that. For sure. And there was a popular, well-listened to radio station, 95.7 FM, Walton Johnson. Some of you may have heard of them in Texas, but Walton and Johnson was talking about how there was allegedly a bunch of protesters defacing the Robert E. Lee monument, and sort of insinuated that, if the cops aren't doing anything, maybe the Hells Angels should go down there. And sure enough, within an hour, these biker gangs came down to protect the monument. Of course, I don't really see what good it did because they arrived after it was gone, and they haven't been back there ever since because city workers have been cleaning it up. So there's something funny there with the biker gangs too. How that was just so too convenient. I mean, me and you and Glenn and others on this network, we immediately say, nothing's a coincidence. So what gives there? So, Chris, you know more about these biker gangs than I do. That's something I haven't really looked into.
Well, according to my sources, and I mean, I pretty much name my sources. The gangs like the Hells Angels and what are some of the other ones? What's the one on the East Coast that's real big? Glenn,
Pagans, the warlords.
The Pagans and the warlords. If you really take away the federal agents and the informants, there wouldn't be a gang. So we saw this in Richmond. We had biker gangs that were involved in the alleged biker gangs. I confronted somebody for being a biker, and he was also a actor for InfoWars because we connected the dots. I mean, obviously anyone could see that there were a bunch of bikers around, and then we saw bikers when Glenn saw them first when he was being chased by the Secret Service and city, state, and local police for simply, well, I guess the worst thing he did was having any sort of association with me. That's why he was told he was banned and being chased away. But we saw the bikers shilling on InfoWars for Donald Trump live in person. I confronted them. They're on camera. Thousands of people have, maybe probably a couple thousand of people have watched the video where I confront these biker gang guys or biker. I mean, like I said, these guys seem to all be feds. They seem to all be military trained at the highest level, and there seem to be infiltrators, and it seems to be well known. So yeah, of course they didn't do any good. And what do these biker gangs have to do with Robert E. Lee? Now, we can tie even J. Edgar Hoover back to Robert E. Lee through the Kappa Alpha Order, because Robert E. Lee is the spiritual leader of the Kappa Alpha Order. There's a lot of, good and bad propaganda around the last gentle knight, Robert E. Lee, and that the men of the Kappa Alpha Order are the sons of Lee. And of course, those include American heroes like George Patton. So I don't want to just say that it's degenerates like J. Edgar Hoover, but like I always say, in any group, there's going to be degenerates, there's going to be assholes, there's going to be whatever. But when you get to the top and you want to get done serious things, you have to use the mental alchemy to kind of separate the good from the bad when it comes to things. And the best way we have to do it here is through use of, our common law, English common law, European common law, where we just say, hey, look, this is what's happening. Obviously, we can't prove this in a court of law. We have court documents where we're proving this, but it's not going to be verified by a judge who, through its verification, would be signing possibly his own lawful death warrant. So we're telling you that this is the way things go. If you know anything about anything, if you have any association with, FBI agents or government officials or city council members or Hollywood producers or anything like that, and a lot of you may. Like my brother works for the Pentagon, and yeah, he's a criminal. Now, am I going to advocate for his execution? Absolutely not. Am I going to make sure I do everything to prevent that? Absolutely. But should he be living a rich lifestyle while I'm sitting talking to you on a 12-year-old computer for and I appreciate that. I did get a donation from a listener. I'm very thankful because everything helps. Honestly, when somebody donates $20, that's good. That probably means every 2 weeks I'll have food to eat on Thursday night. But anyways, getting back to this, that's what kind of guys these are. I know it. I mean, I don't let I would never let any of my family members live like they allow me to live, and they're doing it because they're associated with the government, especially my brother, who's the richest and most associated with the government out of my immediate family. So yeah, there you have it. But again, I mean, we shall execute some of these criminals, but he's not that high up. He's high up enough to be rich. But anybody associated with the government is rich in comparison to everyone on this call. So there we have it. I just didn't want to get too far off base, but I want to show, like, hey, if you don't, this is the truth. This is reality. This is prima facie evidence. These are prima facie claims that have been verified. We're not making any of this stuff up. We have proof. We have confronted these individuals in a way where we're verifying the confrontation, and when we go, you're under arrest, turn over your weapons, and we're armed and they're armed, and they can ignore us. I don't know. We need to have a critical mass, including, look, the FBI itself is going to have to facilitate these arrests. And we know that members of the Kappa Alpha Order like Melvin Purvis and J. Edgar Hoover have orchestrated and made PR stunts and movies out of catching alleged public enemies. And that's what we're going to do, because when we're doing all of this, yes, we really mean it, but we're just making a movie. This is just a documentary that we're making about the lawful neutralization of the criminals that run the United States government and the lawful restoration of the law of the land. So when we do this, we're requiring the FBI, you're going to have to turn these guys over to us, or we're going to have to get you all ourselves. And it's going to be done because we outnumber you so much. We outnumber you so much, and we'll start training. There's a video, Glenn, do you remember when we went down to Petersburg and we were camped out and we kind of had we were armed. The militia was armed. Jimmy Higgins, rest in peace, Jimmy. James Higgins was armed. I think he just had his sidearm on him. I was armed. Maybe Nathan Cox was armed. And there were about a half a dozen of us armed, and we took over the police station in Petersburg just through sheer numbers. And also, this was kind of an inside job but we manipulated it to the point where we had an armed crowd of about 100 individuals surrounding 2 intelligence agents of the Petersburg Police Department. And you can find it on Richmond Peace on YouTube, and I think it's probably, I don't know exactly, maybe it has 250,000 views. But that was very easy, wasn't it?
Yeah. Once you know where they're at, they're easy to spot.
We walked off. We ourselves we surrounded them. We're armed. We outgunned them. We surrounded them, and we could have put them in their own cuffs and stuck them in their own jail. But we didn't. We walked away. So that's what we're going to have to start doing. We're going to have to start having these press conferences where we go in front of the regional Federal Reserve Bank buildings where we, the militia, deem it and sanction it and say, look, the reins of power, they're going to have to start being turned over to the people. These underground military bases, they're going to have to be under constant surveillance of the militia, meaning anyone at any time can plug into the internet and can go to a website and see what's going on at Site R, aka Raven Rock, or Site C, in Washington County, Maryland, which is Pentagon Reservation, and see what's going on at the top secret levels. And at the top secret levels, what they'll see when this happens is that the Russian government, the Chinese government, the Israeli government, and all the governments of the world are engaged in collusion in war against the people. So when we call for the lawful neutralization of the government, the current Jewish-occupied United States government, we're not just doing that. We're saying, Vladimir Putin, we're calling for your lawful neutralization. You're a sick, FSB, KGB Jew who carried out the false flag operations where he and other FSB agents, along with traitors inside the Russian government, bombed apartment buildings that swept him into power. They blamed the Chechens and then went to war with the Chechens, just like 9/11 did with Iraq and Afghanistan, and now Libya, Syria, etc. Hey, we'll be back on the other side. Hey, welcome back, everyone. It's a man called Chris Dorsey of the Virginia Militia. You're listening to the Militia Intelligence Report on Renegade Broadcasting. You will not find the truth like this anywhere else on the radio, anywhere else on television, any other network. You just won't find it. This is where the resistance is. If someone says that they're part of the resistance to this criminal occupied government and they don't find us, they're not part of the resistance. So got Glenn Sutphin, press journalist and investigative reporter, and I got David Dotrieve on the line. I got James in Tennessee also on the line, and it's been a great show so far. We're getting a lot out there, and we invite you to go back to the other podcasts if this is a little too much for you right now. But others, hey, we're doing everything we can to get you on our wavelength here. This is the only way possible. These guys who engage in war against us, they're not going to turn themselves in. We have to use different sorts of tactics, and we have to use any tactics necessary. And we went through some stuff about the lawful abolition of government and how it's sanctioned in Virginia law and the Constitution of the United States. And, of course, in the first law of the United States, which is the Declaration of Independence. And I just want to put it out, and maybe I'll go to David and then James, and then we'll go back to Glenn. What do you feel was meant by the founders when they set up the system in which the militia was so prominently the only explicit law enforcement arm, and also when they kept saying in redundancy in the Declaration, in the Constitution, and in many state constitutions, including Virginia, that if and when a government becomes tyrannical, that it is the duty of the people to abolish it and restore a government that is acting in the best interest of the body of the people. What do you think about that, David?
Well, I know for sure they knew the dangers of centralized power and governing only on a community level, which is something we've become, you could say, alien to, because we don't really know the sense of local community anymore, and that's what they were afraid of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not too long ago, when the country talked of possible secession, like back in 2012, 2011. I don't know anybody that really took it seriously, because secession really isn't so easy anymore, because nobody really occupies by a state level anymore, where it's you identify with your state your roots, people around you you've grown up with. You see, when you join the United States military these days, you wind up with people from all over the country, people you've never really grown up with or met before. And if you and a buddy go together, I don't know if they separate you or anything, but anyway, I mean, it's like I said, I believe that plays a key role in the brainwashing and the soldiering and such. But anyway,
David, I think you brought up a key point. We've got a lot of military bases around here. When we go down to Petersburg and when we take over when the militia takes over the streets in Petersburg, or whether we do it in Richmond, I mean, we see, you can see lots of video of us confronting military personnel on the streets of Richmond. Of course, we're armed, and they probably are armed too. But what you see is you don't see a homogenous European-American fighting force. You see pretty much the opposite. You see like the 50% plus one non-European fighting force, and it's getting more and more under the control of that. There was the individuals in charge of the ICBMs for the United States government. It went from this guy Jack Weinstein, and then it went to an individual who is at least mostly African of African descent. So the DHS is run by Jay Johnson. The Supreme Court has nothing but Roman Catholics and Jews on it. So the founding stock of the United States, Western Europeans, they don't really have any sort of control or even any leverageable position of power in the government anymore. And I'm certainly not going to call Donald Trump a Western European, especially since all of his male and female wives are from Russian communist and Jewish background. So, and it seems like I'd like to see his genetic results. I'd like to see his haplogroup testing because I'm skeptical of him as well as far as that goes. But here's one thing I read on the show last night, and it bears repeating. And this is from Declaration of Independence, that to secure these rights, we'll just read this beginning second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. The word men, he used that to say what he considered men, equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government, consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles. So that's how this country was founded. And the structure of the law is European common law. And according to our branch of European common law, which is the Constitution for the United States of America, it puts all the power in the hands of the body of the people. And it does so through the militia, of course, by all the founders of the Constitution placing all military and civil power into the hands of the people. Not all, but a lion's share. It states in Virginia Constitution, Article 1, Section 13. So I'm going to read you the preamble of the Constitution. And guys, this is just basic stuff, but this is all fundamentals. This is the fundamental where we show, hey, under the law, the government can't have any control over the people. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to explain why, I should say, since we're on the radio and I want to use my words more exactly. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, that's us, the European Americans, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So I laid it all out to you. We've explained why all those words are important. I'm going to briefly explain it again. And it's not anything other than we know what they were saying because we've read and laid out their context for what they're saying. When one ordains it, it's an ecclesiastical creation. It's a religious creation, like God creating man, like the myth of life springing from Mother Earth, or the old mural painted on the Sistine Chapel of the hand of God reaching out to the hand of man or Adam. It's allegorical. It's saying we are the God of this government. We ordain it. We establish it. And what is it for? It's for the blessings of liberty. Who's it for? It's for the people of the United States of America, the body of the people, the Western Europeans that form this country. Hey, we'll include everyone. I don't want to take liberty away from anyone, but I'm just telling you who this meant when it said who's in charge of this government. So it's the European Americans and their posterity. That is us. That is us. Now, we will spread the wealth instead of having a police state and having, everyone be cold and starve and be wanting. We shall provide for all. But the thing is, it says, who's in charge of this government? The European Americans. We are. We're in charge of this government, and we're requiring the levers of power be handed back over to us, and there's no other solution. And why this has been taken away? Because the only threat to organized Jewry is organized Western Europeans. That's the only force strong enough to defeat the evil of international Jewry. And how did they do this? They infiltrated and also created all of the cultural, I would say, steering committees like Masonry, the Catholic and Protestant churches, organizations like the Rotary Club, etc. They have created, in some cases, and if they had to, infiltrated and subverted other things that they didn't create. And that's how we are slaves in our own land, and our own family members haven't been engaged in war against each other, whether it's the war between the states or the Revolutionary War or World War I or World War II. It's a fratricidal war that these Jews, through control of their international monetary system, have forced the American people and the European people en masse throughout the world, in every corner of the globe, to engage against one another. And we're going to say, no, it's time to turn it back over to the European American, and that's what we're requiring. James, we're going to go to you, and then I'm going to let Glenn get his final thoughts out for the show, and we're going to close up with some more law, references to the law of the land. So, James, you have anything to add? Anyway, it looks like James is with us, but maybe he's on mute or something. So, David, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. Oh, there he is. Go ahead, James. You've been listening?
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys.
Go for it. No worries. Go for it.
Yeah, it seems like that the militia is good. I like going back to the basics. You know, it's something that we need to hear. I mean, I come from the days that when everybody talked about, you know, you to love your race, to love your family and guns, and you know, the Constitution and freedom. You can't have those things without the Constitution. I mean, it's pretty basically laid out for us, and it's not by you or me. It's our ancestors laid it out for us. So I mean, it's right there. Why not go for it? You know, I mean, if you pretty basically all you have to do is just cross-reference the information or the content that Renegade Broadcasting puts out. I mean, it's simple. If you got any kind of scientific mind, it's simple. Just cross-reference the information we put out. I mean, pretty basically, like I said, it's not rocket science. But I was wanting to ask you real quick, Chris, how do you see the House Resolution 104 playing into this whole thing? You know, I mean, it seems like that if you do like the Constitution, we are the Palestinians. You know, I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, familiarize me again with 104, please.
It's the act that George Bush in 1991
Talmudic
signed
law.
in for the 7 Noahide laws.
Noahide law, yes, sorry. And thanks for the reminder. Yeah, great point. Yeah, absolutely. There are, according to, I think I heard this from I'm not sure where I heard it because I don't want to, misquote somebody and put it on them if this is incorrect, but it seems that the Bush family were listed during revolutionary times as Jews, and that it has been something that the Bush family has been forwarding through their association with the Chabad Lubavitchers. And of course, the court system at the highest level, the highest form of the court is Talmudic law, Noahide law. It's the law of the land. And a key point to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, James, is, it's all our Constitution, but the framers of the Constitution, man, they were well familiar with English common law, and that's the basis. That's just like an offshoot. That's our brand that's the American brand of common law. And over and over again in the Bill of Rights and in Article 1 and other spots in the Constitution, it references that, hey, the basis of the Constitution is common law. Okay, here we go. Amendment 7, in suits of common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. They call it the ancient right of trial by jury shall be preserved. And no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise reexamined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Okay, so there you have it right there. It says, hey, and maybe the lead is buried in that to show how the common law doesn't operate in the United States, because most folks are convicted in this so-called and well-called criminal justice system, and it's not even a court of record. They can get convicted and thrown in jail for many, many years without even getting a jury trial. 98% of the trials in the United States are not jury trials. Therefore, they're not, under the rules and under the color of law of the common law, which is the basis allegedly of our law. So, yeah, absolutely. This is common law, European common law. It's not just these guys said, hey, we're going to create something new out of complete thin air. They took the law of their ancestors and made it the law of our ancestors, which is the same thing. The founders of the United States, they're the Western European Americans. They're the English, the Irish, the Scots-Irish, the Scottish, the Germans, the French, the Dutch, the Spanish, some Spanish, and also there's a key connection between, certain aspects and populations of Spain, and they're pretty much the same as the population of Ireland, which is very similar genetically to the population of England, which is very similar genetically to the population of France and Germany, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, we've gone through how traders that may have some similar genetic backgrounds are keeping this history from us. And yeah, this is the law. This is the only way that we can restore justice. And also, simple enforcement of the law will result immediately in the abolition of this criminal government and the neutralization thereof and the restoration of European common law through the Constitution for the United States. David, what are your thoughts on that? David seems to have dropped off, so we're going to go to Glenn. David will probably call back here in a second. Glenn, we got about 6 minutes to go. What are your thoughts? Anything you want to get out to the body of the people, or the feds listening, or the combination thereof? Keep it in mind. We'll try to come back to you, but maybe just a couple minute summary or just any thoughts you have.
No, I also agree. We need to get back to common law, to natural law. Get rid of all these get rid of the federal law, which is what the courts are operating under now. And, do away with the admiralty law and all this stuff that has nothing to do with the common law. It was their usurpation, their wise hopping of the system to make it what they said, and get rid of the Bar Association. Why are we still hooked into Britain? To get our lawyers, you have to go to Britain to be a bar member, which is a joke. I mean, we both know about politicians that are corrupt and lawyers that are corrupt in the same person, i.e. Andrew J. Ostrowski. But, we'll get to that on a different subject later on. But I agree with you.
Ostrowski, he's a dirty lawyer, yeah.
He's a dirty lawyer, dirty politician that believes in politics in the justice system. There's the problem, There shouldn't be any politics in the justice system. That's the problem right there. It's too politicized. It's too many lobbies can get in and do what they will, and it's not justice anymore. It's whoever has the most money gets called justice. It's like, it's a joke. We both know this. So I'm totally in agreement. And it's all part of the Agenda 2050, all part of the strategy that they're bringing in from the UN on the Strong Cities Initiative, where they're running the police, they're federalizing, making them MPs, military police, not, peace servants. They're military police now. So, it's all federalized, and that's the problem.
And being trained in Israel by Mossad.
And being Mossad trained, and not even only in Israel, they're coming over here now and training them. So they're getting the same training, Same
training where they create the cities like they did in Caroline County, where they create these American cities where the government is training, and actually we see them carrying it out after their training, and there are foreign troops coming into this United States military base training to subdue hometown America, which doesn't look like big cities. It looks like hometown America, small town, rural town. They're coming
rural areas.
Rural areas. Hey, and I just want to go through real quick your reference to the Bar Association. And of course, some folks say it's, it comes from, the inner, middle, and outer temple of the City of London. And we got into how that's, tied into, being agents of the, Bank for International Settlements in Switzerland. A lot of City of London lawyers are
the Temple of Money and the Temple of Law, both of them in the same area. Yep.
Right. So we showed how Ernst & Young controls the Bank of Russia's implementation of their capitalization rates through the Basel III Accord and stuff like that. But also the Bar Association is a secret society, and they call themselves Esquire, right? They do.
Yep.
So we're going to read from, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept any present, annulment, office, or title of any kind whenever from any king, prince, or foreign state. So there you have it. It says right there, no title of nobility. And, you know, hey, we got all these Knights of Malta in these intelligence agencies. Is that a title of nobility given by a foreign state, a king or a prince? We see the president of the United States getting awards from the Saudi king. You know, we see Bush and Obama getting that. We see, you know, like just what James referenced, where George H.W. Bush is getting sanctioned by these Sanhedrin, Talmudic, you know, Chabad Lubavitchers. He's getting a title of nobility from them on top of being a Knight of Malta.
Mm-hmm.
So all this stuff that they're doing is unlawful under that thing that they swear an oath to uphold. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with we're the only hope that we've got. And if this plan isn't going to work, somebody else out there better come up with a better plan to abolish this government. I think the easiest way is to use the rule of law, which, if simply enforced at any one of these subjects that we're talking about, false flags, the child pedophile network, human organ trafficking, you know, spraying poison through chemtrailing, you know, manipulation of the weather, disappearing political dissidents and assassinations occurring on U.S. soil, false flag operations not just carried out by the United States government, but directed by the State of Israel with even more complicity of the Russian and Chinese governments and the UN than one could possibly imagine. That's what we have. That's what we're up against. And we're providing context for the solution that was prescribed by our ancestors. That is the only reason something called the United States of America even exists. So what we have anymore, we should find something better to call it than the United States government. I prefer to call it the Jewish occupied shadow government. But the United States government doesn't even exist. As Glenn pointed out, we have FEMA regions. So
yeah, they won't exist soon.
Okay,
yeah.
well, for now they exist. So we'll just deal with what we have now. So we're not operating under the Constitution. We're operating under continuity of operations. We know where these operations are running out of. We know who's given the top secret clearance. I have reason to believe family members of mine are doing that. So we know how to get the names of these million or so folks that are actually running these governments, who are contractors for private corporations for the United States Defense Department. Probably about 60% are that, and about 40% are actual Defense Department employees, be them civilian lawyers or actual military generals and lieutenant colonels, on down the line to colonels and sergeants. And the police, which can't be separated from the military occupation. Hey, thanks for listening to the Militia Intelligence Report on Renegade Broadcast. Hey, thanks to all my guests. God bless.